today we're gonna have another story time, but this story time is kind of dark, not gonna lie. If you're not in the headspace, I would recommend just like skipping this one. I was thinking to not tell this story, like this one has been in the drafts for a long time. I think I mentioned about this on my stream, where my stream is normally a little bit more personal, but this story is, I didn't tell it for a multitude of reasons. One, because it involves other people. Two, because it is a little bit dark. Three, because honestly it's embarrassing. Like, it is a little bit of an embarrassing story, but I was thinking about it a lot recently, and I would want to raise a little bit of awareness on this topic. And I'm personally, like, nothing bad happened to me in the story, so like it's fine for me. So yeah, I figured why not? I'll tell you guys. So this story talks a little bit about sex work in Japan. I personally am pro sex work to a point. Like anything really, it's a very nuanced topic, and I don't want to get into a debate about this on my channel. But I think that the issue with it is that a lot of it is based on exploitation, and it's very, very easily to get exploited into sex work. And this is about foreign women moving to Japan and possibly being exploited into sex work, because unfortunately Japan does have a little bit of a problem with this. Like, you've probably seen, for example, women think they're going to become idols, they sign contracts, and it turns out actually the contract states that they have to do some work that is maybe not being an idol. There's a lot of things like that here, and the attitude to sex work is very, very different in Japan. So I want, first of all, when you think about this kind of thing, you have to take yourself out of the Western lens and realize that sex work is very, very different. Like, the attitude to sex work is different in Japan, and what possibly in the West you might consider as sex work isn't necessarily considered as sex work in Japan. There's a lot of like borderline sex work things, like hostessing, con cafes, stuff like that, and I think a lot of it is just because people in Japan are very, very lonely. And for me, I personally have no problem with these things, as long as the people, the workers are being treated fairly, they're being paid fairly, they're not being exploited, and they're not being forced to do anything that they don't want to do. For me, I've been living in Japan for 10 years, and I've been working the entire time, mostly just a normal job. And of course I have my side hustles on the side. I do YouTube, I do designing, I do stuff like that. Doing most kinds of sex work on most visas is illegal. So that's the majority of reasons where people don't do stuff like that in Japan when you're a foreigner. And as I've been in Japan for 10 years and I'm a Western woman, I have been asked to do stuff like that, or like I've been solicited like that, as I'm sure any woman in Japan has been. You'll be in Shinjuku, you'll be on the street, a Japanese guy will approach you and ask you if you want to work in like a bar, blah 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 blah. You always say no. This is one aspect of just living here that happens, but there is something a little bit more sinister. There are a lot of Western girls that work in that kind of industry that do recruit other Western girls. And I think it's because maybe they don't see it as a big deal, or maybe they want to pull other people into the industry, but there have been a lot of cases where girls will invite me to do things that are what I would consider to be sex work. And I know a lot of people this has happened to. I've also known a lot of women that came to Japan and got regular jobs, but then they got invited into that kind of work, and then they quit their regular job, and then they just go straight into whatever that kind of work is. And honestly, in my experience of seeing this happen, it doesn't usually work out well. One of the times this happened to me personally, one of my half Japanese friends asked if I wanted to do karaoke with her and my other friends. I think there was 3 of us. And we had nothing to do, we were gonna head home, but I had some free time, so I was like, sure. She was like, oh yeah, if you come, it's gonna be like a party, and if you come, we'll pay you like 10,000 yen for like 2 hours of karaoke. I'm like, that's very weird, why would they pay us to do karaoke? Anyway, so me and my friend get there, and we start doing karaoke, and it's kind of more like a bar environment, and then she invites these Western guys who were just so excited to see us, and they're like, wow, you guys are so cute, blah blah blah. She's like, yes, these are my friends. So we were there, and this is years and years and years ago, and we were there with them, just talking with them, blah blah blah, and they're like, hey, do you want to come out afterwards with us? And we're like, no, we're going home. And they're like, oh, but like we can go out like drinking even more, blah 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 blah. And these are like middle-aged Western tourists. I'm like, no thank you, I'm good. I want to leave. After the 2 hours, my friend's like, oh, here you are. She gives me money. I'm like, thanks, that was incredibly lame. And then my other friend said, I saw the half Japanese friend outside receiving a wad of money from one of those guys. So it seems like one of those guys was like, hey, while we're in Japan, we want to meet cute girls. She set it up and she profited off of her friends. And that's one thing that I just can't abide by. And it's like you're trying to profit off your friends or exploiting your friends. So I mean, like, I was like, okay, I'm never hanging out with her again, Jesus Christ, because like that is not like that. It's like a dangerous situation. It just made me feel really, really bad, honestly. So that was the first instance, and that's not the story that I'm going to be telling today. Me personally, I'm a very strong, stubborn person, and that's why potentially when you're like, Capsule Bunny, you put yourself into the weird situation sometimes, and that's mostly because I know that if someone does something I don't like, I will tell them to fuck off. But a lot of people, do not have the ability to do that and may potentially freeze in those kind of situations. And that's why you should never, ever, ever put someone in a situation like this. So this is like one of my first years that I lived in Japan. So I guess I was still pretty naive. There was a girl I knew who was in the ghetto community, and she mailed me one day and she's like, hi, oh, I need your help. So there's this like older gentleman, and right now he's looking for like a foreign wife, and he's doing like these little interviews. They're kind of cute. He's a nice guy. He's really, really old. He's like 75. Basically he just wants you to meet him and he'll have a little interview, and then he'll give you 10,000 yen. And this is when I first moved to Japan, and I didn't really have any money. And I was like, 10,000 yen is quite a lot of money. I'm like, is that all I have to do? I just have to speak to this guy? And like, you have to realize in this situation that when you work as an English teacher, that is already your job. Like, sometimes there are times when it's just lonely salarymen that come and they want to speak to you, which is like exactly the same as, for example, a lot of escort work. And I think that this is a part of it where Japan kind of blurs the lines of these things. So in my head, I was like, well, I pretty much do this anyway, because I was working at that time, I was working at an eikaiwa that was specifically for like celebrities and the ultra rich. So I would have to speak to a lot of like annoying old people anyways. I was like, you know what? Okay, sure, I can go meet this guy. And I was like, just to be clear, all I have to do is speak to him for like a little bit, right? And just be like, I'm not feeling it, so I don't want to be your wife, sir. And then that would be it, right? And she's like, yeah, that's it. So that was a lie. So I ended up heading to meet him. She gave me his number or his line. So she's like, yeah, he'll tell you where to meet him. He actually lives at this particular hotel, and he doesn't usually live there. For certain reasons that I would find out later. I'm like, okay, that's a bit sussy. But the hotel was a really nice hotel. And in that case, I knew that like probably nothing bad would happen at a really, really fancy hotel. If something did, I would notify the staff. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we met in the lobby, and he said, he's like, I know this sounds weird, but can we go to my hotel room? He's like, I'll explain why. It's just like, I don't like to be seen in public. I've ordered us like a nice lunch to my room so we can just eat there. I'm like, okay, this is kind of sus. But anyways, I see this guy. I would say he's about 75. You can normally tell by older guys because they have really long earlobes, and he had like really long fluffy earlobes. So I would say he was about 75. He was my height, so I'm like, if he touched me, I am not above elder abuse if it means slapping an old guy who grabs my bum. So I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. So we go to his hotel room, a very, very fancy room, and we have lunch, and it's just like unagi. It was pretty good. I remember him being like, this is the best unagi in the whole of Tokyo. And I was like, I will be real with you. I don't eat unagi often. I've had unagi a few times, and it tastes like the other unagi I have eaten. I cannot tell, but it is very good. And then after we eat, he's like, oh, I almost forgot. Here's your money for coming. And he handed me an envelope. In Japan, normally when you're doing something like this, someone will give you an envelope. if it's like any kind of work really that's like in cash in hand. And my biggest mistake of this whole thing is that I did not check how much money was in the envelope. And so he could have stiffed me. Like, he could have not paid anything. He could have just put like a piece of paper in there, and I didn't check it, and I went and put it in straight in my bag because I felt a little bit awkward. Like, it would be like I didn't trust him if I checked it. And anyways, even if there's nothing, we're just gonna eat. I got free lunch, and then the hotel was actually near my work anyways, which I was heading to later. So I was like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. So we're talking, and then we eat lunch, and this old guy's like, okay, so I'm thinking we could take a bath. And I'm like, excuse me, what do you mean? He's like, we could take a bath, that could be fun. I'm like, oh, I was like, I think you might be laboring under the impression that I am a sex worker. I'm just an English teacher, actually. My friend said that you just wanted to chat and for like an hour, so that's why. And he's like, oh, so we're not gonna. I'm like, no, sorry, I don't do that. I'm just an English teacher. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, that happens sometimes. I understand. Instead, do you want to watch Carmen the Musical with me? I'm like, I'll watch Carmen the Musical with you. Sure, why not, Grandpa? So we watched Carmen the Musical, which is a long musical. But I didn't have work to the evening anyway, so we watched Carmen the Musical, and he got like those old man otsumami snacks, and we're eating those, and we're talking a little bit about the Russo-Japanese War and like Stalinism. It was really interesting. And then I was like, okay. And then he was like, I do have one request, if you wouldn't mind. I'm like, okay. He's like, can you just tuck me in bed and say goodnight? I'm like, okay. So he gets in bed, he gets under the covers, I tuck him in, I go, night, Grandpa, and then I leave. You know when like you don't realize how weird a situation is until you leave? I was like, that was kind of weird actually. So anyway, so I leave the hotel. It wasn't a bad experience for me, nothing happened, we didn't touch. I just listened to him talk about musicals and history. And then I was like, oh, I bet he didn't pay me today. And like, that makes sense because like, whatever, we were just chatting, watching TV. I get the envelope out of my bag and I open it, and there was 230,000 yen in the envelope. 230,000 yen is a lot of money, and I think when this happened was probably about 10 years ago, and it was a lot of money then, and it's a lot of money now. And I was like, oh yeah, he really thought that something was gonna happen. Damn. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep the money. I think this is a lesson learned for everyone involved. I'm gonna keep the money. So I was like, oh. So I was like, I have a little bit of time before work. So I went straight to 109 and I had a little shopping spree. And then I kept enough for like the month's rent and groceries and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, okay, that was pretty good. And I went to work and I went home. And then the next day, the guy mailed me and he was online and he seemed pretty angry. He was like, I think you should give the rest of that money to your friend because, you know, like, I was expecting something else and I didn't get it. So I want you to give the rest of the money to your friend. And I said, absolutely not. I was tricked. I said, I thought that I was just going to come and have a conversation and you wanted to do whatever, and absolutely not. I'm keeping all this money. And I mailed my friend and I was like, you should be ashamed of yourself because this guy clearly thought something else was going to happen. And then she was like, oh no, I don't know what gave him that idea. And it's like, look, I wasn't fucking born yesterday. And she's like, well, you got me in a lot of trouble because like that guy gave you a lot of money, so I think you should give some to me. I'm like, hell no, I already spent it in one spot, which doesn't exist anymore. This is, I was like, you need to never do this to anyone ever again if I find out you're doing this to other people. So basically, I was really, really mad. And then after that, I never spoke to her, I think, ever again. And that was that. But it really made me realize how dangerous it is, particularly for foreigners in Japan, particularly from women. And a lot of times I've heard stories where women will get roped into this kind of thing. And here's the thing, I'm the kind of person that will just be like, fuck off and leave. But that kind of situation was very intimidating and stressful. And I can imagine a lot of people in that situation, they might not do the same thing, you know, and that made me very, very worried. I'm like, how many women have been put in this situation where they feel like they're forced to do something? And that, I don't know, it just made me really, really worried. So I did warn a few people about that via word of mouth, but like, I don't know, the whole thing, I think about it a lot and it really does stress me out. But for me as well, it also, that was a thing that was like, okay, I'm never gonna trust anyone like that again, and I'm definitely never gonna go meet someone where I don't know who they are first. When I first arrived in Japan, honestly, I was just like, I was working a lot, it was a new place, it was blah 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 blah. I was a little bit more naive than I am now, so that's the kind of person that these people look for, is people who are very new to Japan and they're very, very naive. So if you're watching this video and you are a foreign woman who is moving to Japan or who has just moved to Japan, I would just say be careful. And if you want to do that kind of work, I won't judge you. Honestly, I think that that's totally fine. And in Japan as well, it's not as viewed negatively as in the West. However, just make sure that you don't do anything that you don't want to do, and you're not put into a position that you don't want to be in, because that's just my biggest worry. But yeah, let me know what you think. I know this story's a little bit dark. Again, it ended up pretty good in my favor personally, but the whole thing, honestly, again, kind of embarrassing for me. I forgot about this story until very, very recently, and the whole thing just made me feel really icky, even though nothing happened. And I just wanted to mention about it in case anyone finds herself in that situation. If you do, please leave. Anyways, as always, thank you for watching, and please subscribe. Bye!